Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. It's Wednesday, June 11th, episode 411. We're going to talk about taxes and migration. It was a long day for me. Sorry, contractors left kind of late, and then yeah, we had to prep for tomorrow. But something came up, and I thought I'd just do a quick episode. A guy named Alex Rucuso on X, he posted this. It goes, the recent capital gains tax increase in the United Kingdom, England, was expected to bring additional tax revenue. Instead, high net worth individuals and families are leaving the country, leading to a 10% fall in net capital gains tax revenue. Welcome to the Laffer curve, suckers. So I looked up Laffer curve. The Laffer curve is a graphical representation of the relationship between tax rates and total tax revenue collected by a government. It suggests that there is an optimal tax rate where government revenue is maximized. At either extreme, 0 or 100% tax, the government would collect no revenue. The curve is bell-shaped, implying that a very high or very low tax rates can lead to decreased revenue. So obviously, if you have zero tax rate, then you're not going to collect any taxes. And if you have a 100% tax rate, you're not going to collect anything because people are just simply going to move away, right? Because why work if you have to pay it all in taxes? So uh, there's no point in saving money either, right? Because you're going to get hit by taxes. And so the capital gains tax, right? Next net capital gains tax revenue is if you buy something at, like, say, $100 and then you sell it for $200, you have to pay a tax on the $200, excuse me, on the $100 profit that you made, right? So not only do you have to pay the income tax, but on additionally, you have to pay a capital gains tax. That's the way I understand it. And so basically it becomes, or if you bought a stock and then it goes up in value, that increase in value is a capital gain. The price of the painting you bought, all of these things, there would be a capital gains tax. And so savings as well. If you was earning interest, like 4% interest, and you cashed it out, then that 4% interest or capital gain, then you have to pay like 1 or 2% in taxes. I mean, so it's like it's kind of ridiculous. It's a terrible tax. It discourages people from saving or even trying to work harder. So it is a really, really bad tax. Peter Schiff once talked about how if you tax like people's incomes, let's say over $250,000. So as soon as you make 251, that $1 will be taxed at 90%. That's the way I understand it. I don't think it goes back and then all 250,000 is taxed at 90%, but everything over 250,000 will be taxed at 90%, which basically means taking a vacation only costs 10%, right? So if you're going to lose 90% of it anyway, then you're not going to work and you're only going to lose 10% of what you would have made. And so high taxes like that, when you have um, tax brackets, right? Basically, what you're doing is you're just simply incentivizing vacations. Now, the problem here, of course, is that most politicians are idiots, and they believe that if they increase taxes, then people will have no choice but to pay, right? They believe that they're back in elementary school chemistry class, that if they change one variable, all of the other factors, all of the other variables will stay the same. But of course, they're not going to stay the same, right? So if I'm sitting there and someone's punching me in the face, why do I have to sit here and keep getting punched in the face? No, the very least I can do is cover my face or move away, and that's what will happen. Then the person won't be able to continue to punch me in the face. So that's what government thinks, that they can order you around, control you, and you're just going to sit there because you're an idiot and you're just going to take it. And so when they make these projections, it's all ignoring how people are going to respond to the different changes in the rules and the laws. But in reality, people are thinking beings, even, and it doesn't matter how smart or dumb you think they are. It's easy to understand pain. It's easy to understand loss, and so people are going to change rather quickly. When they see something that has a negative consequence to them. So behavior and choices are dynamic. They're always changing and they're always in flux. This is why I really enjoy Austrian economics as opposed to like Chicago school, London school, because it takes into account the freedom and the freedom of individuals to make a different choice. And so that story reminds me of a couple other stories, which kind of tells you governments never learn, right? They keep doing the same stupid thing over and over and over again, even though it obviously is a failed policy. So there was this guy in 2015, in New Jersey. His name was David Tepper. He was a hedge fund manager. And whatever you might think about hedge fund managers or anything that they do, no one should be that rich, whatever. The reality is that New Jersey was collecting $140 million in taxes annually from this one person, right? This one person was responsible for $140 million in taxes. And then New Jersey decided that they were going to impose a millionaire's tax, right? And so increase his taxes. And he's like, I'm already paying $140 million. And so he moved to Florida where there is no income tax, right? And so in one fell swoop, one person moving out of the state, that state had a monetary crisis, right? A lot because, governments spend the money ahead of time, right? So they're counting on that 140 million. They spent it, but now they have a shortfall. Where's it going to come from? And the government never cuts anything. And so that's the problem. Where are they going to get more revenue? They're put in a bind. And so obviously they are forced to raise taxes. Ultimately, I believe the law was repealed, but then back in 2020, it was back on the table. And he basically said, look, I'm paying 120, $140 million to you a year. Don't touch me, right? So don't, raise my taxes. I'm paying enough already. And I think that is a big hunk of change, and he is paying those taxes. So why increase them, right? Just for simple short-term uh, political gain, just for people who don't pay taxes, so it's just kind of absurd to me. New Jersey at the time in 2016 was ranked 48th in income tax burden, right? They were all already one of the heaviest taxed, states in the country. California and New York, I think, were the only two that were higher than New Jersey. So I guess they're in good company, right? Then there's Gerard Depardieu, who is a French actor. You might have known him from Cyrano de Bergerac and all these other movies. He was over like 200 movies or something like that. But he moved to Belgium to avoid a new 75% tax on the wealthy, which was passed in 2012, right? So I remember that story. I talked about it in class. I was like, what happens when you try to tax the rich is that they move away. And it pissed off a lot of the students that I had that year. But I was like, what are you going to do? Right? What are you going to do? And I'll get to that question in a moment. Then I stayed at an Airbnb in the state of Delaware once. And the property, as it turns out, we found out, was the retirement home for a couple who were living in a different state. I don't know which state they were living in. And their plan was to move there. And the reason is because in Delaware, there's no sales tax, there's no tax on Social Security, there's a retirement income exclusion, low property taxes, no inheritance tax. So this person was planning to move there after retirement. And so whatever state they were living in, which is counting on their retirement taxes, right? Taxes after retirement. No, they're not going to get it. They're going to move to a state where they don't have to pay as much in tax. So I've talked about this idea of migration before in episode 230. Government is a business, and I talked about early American colonization, why people came to the colonies more from England than from France, Spain, and the Netherlands. And it was for different reasons. So that was kind of an interesting episode if you want to check that out. Episode 185, I talked about my mom escaping North Korea. And, basically, she had no choice because the communists showed up one day and told her family, this property now belongs to the people. And they kicked her out, right? I don't even think they gave them an hour to pack up stuff to go. And my mom was 14 years old, and she basically had to carry one of her younger sisters south. And Korea is a mountainous country, you know what I'm saying? So that took a while. And it was from Pyongyang. She was living at the capital of, near the capital of North Korea. And that is halfway the up the peninsula from the north-south border. It's halfway mark between the northern border and the border with South Korea. So she had to walk a long way, and ultimately she made it all the way down to Busan, which is on the southern coast, right? That's insane, really. In episode 298, I talked about Milton Friedman. And this is a quote from him. The clearest demonstration of how people value freedom is the way they vote with their feet when they have no other way to vote. Right. So most of us, we have, even if we do vote for certain people, once they get into government, they are corrupted. They no longer represent us. They're representing special interest groups. Right. And so our ability to vote for lower taxes is simply not there. We don't have any voting power. We're given the appearance of voting power, but I mean, even Donald Trump proved that out, right? We voted for peace. We voted for, ending waste, fraud, and abuse. And I just saw a headline, I just glimpsed it, where all of the family members of military personnel are being evacuated from the Middle East. Why? Well, because they're planning on bombing Iran. I mean, it's the biggest asinine, most stupid, idiotic thing, and we have no way to stop it. We, the voters, the American people. I mean, when they talk about democracy on the ballot, if in the communist sense, it's true, but in the sense of the will of the people, yeah, there is none. Okay. Uh, and this is why the federal government wants more power and walls, power to deny migration out, like California tried to do. California tried to do this. So when they kept raising taxes, high net worth individuals were moving out of California. And so they said, if you try to move out, you have to pay taxes for 5 years. What? No. Well, how can you pass a law like that, right? And so they want to be able to extend their ability to tax wherever you go. And already the United States taxes you wherever you go. You can leave the country, work in another country, but you still have to pay taxes to the United States, which is why so many people renounce their citizenship when they go overseas because they're given no choice. I mean, how do you make any money? How do you save money if you have to pay taxes twice to the country where you're working and also to the United States? And you can bet that the taxes you have to pay for the United States are much higher. And then you have walls not to keep immigrants out, but to keep people in. Just like East Berlin, you couldn't escape into West Berlin because of the wall. And so the walls that you used to have, that you claim to put up to keep illegal immigration lower, is used to keep you in the country and keep paying taxes. There is still a little bit of freedom in this country, right? We can move from state to state. Well, people can. I can't because I'm tied to the church here. I can't leave the church. And so I'm stuck in where I am, and they can do anything, and I'm called to the church. And so I have to stay. But we need more freedom to be able to move about the country, move across city lines if we want to avoid high Democrat controlled city taxes, move out to the suburbs where it's generally Republican, or we can move to a different state that has lower taxes or no tax. This is a freedom. But the great thing about it is that it is accountability for the government, right? So when I said government is a business, the better you run your town, your business, right? Your business is to govern the town. The better you do it, the more people will try to live in your town. The worse you are, the more people will flee. That's why everyone is trying to get out of North Korea. That's why a lot of people would love to get out of oppressive countries to a place where it is more free because the government sucks. But we have become that government. We have become everything that I used to mock and, uh, you know, just rip on when I was younger. We have become that aggressive, authoritative, militaristic, uh, fascistic, hypocritical government that lies to us all of the time. And I always wondered how was it that people would still believe the government? Well, I see it now. And it's crazy, right? And it's you find those kinds of people in the Democrat and the Republican camp. And then if you go to the libertarians, they just fight each other, because that's all they love doing. And I've talked about how to try to bring unity before in other episodes, but what we see now is that California, is subsidized by the federal government. We must stop that, right? All those riots, they're paid for, right? A lot of them are being paid to riot, incentivized to riot, and it's just not right. And the local government there, the governor to the mayor, they are not stopping it. And so they should go down with the ship. Like the rest of us should not be obligated to pay for anything that goes on in California. Everything should just stop. And then they have to live in the bed that they have made. In other words, by not trying to stop all of the riots, see what happens, right? Especially when you don't get bailouts from the federal government, see what happens. People are going to move out in spite of the good weather. I mean, the good weather is just simply not enough to risk just simply, to risk everything that you have made and saved and worked for your whole life just for some nice weather. It's just simply not worth it. So the federal government is propping up California at our expense. And so people should leave to punish the government, right? All high net worth individuals should move out of California to punish California and for the rest of us to not have a smidgen of mercy or pity on them, right? Leave them with all of the illegals that they love so much and then see what they ultimately will do. And I know there are a lot of innocents that are going to be caught up in that. And so that is why I know it's not going to happen, right? But that is the way that you punish a government. Everyone leaves. The more that people are able to move, the more accountability that the government cannot avoid, right? They can't avoid it. Uh, and the benefit also is that they are weaker. That state becomes weaker in Congress and in the determining of national elections. And so we should want to have that ability to be able to vote with our feet, to migrate when we want to, especially when the taxes are way too high and there is no benefit, right? You pay the high taxes and all the money goes to illegals, nothing else. And that's upside down world, man. That is just simply not the way to have civilization, as they say. But that's it for this episode. I will talk to you next time.